It's meant for tall people. What happens if like a short person comes to see? Good evening, Chodesh Tov. Welcome. Thank you, everybody, for coming out on this cold evening. For those of you that don't know, I'm Melissa Raymond, the director of Matan Beit Shemesh. Outside, you'll see our schedule for our weekly shiurim, and the next semester starts in a month, February 15th. The week before our registration will be open. If you want to be added to our email list or our WhatsApp list, you can just put your name on. There's a piece of paper outside with Rachel's pencil for you to fill it in. So thank you so much. Also, there is a blood drive going on downstairs. So afterwards, if you want to do another mitzvah after Torah learning, you can donate some blood downstairs. Okay, before we begin, I would like to acknowledge our sponsors who and thank them for tonight's shiur. Davidi and Leah Benscher, Le'ilui Nishmat Gerhard Benscher, Avraham Tzvi ben Shmuel Benscher, who passed away on Yud Zayin Shvat. Also the Bloom family, in memory of their beloved Gavriel, who fell in battle defending the Jewish people and its land, Chaf Zayin Tevet Tafshin Pei Daled. Elaine Koblin, in memory of her father, Shmuel Nath. Mia Weiss, in honor of her father's second bar mitzvah, and Chavtet Shvat, a man who truly appreciates Rabbi Fohrman's book, The Queen You Thought You Knew. Aviva and Jonathan Zahtz, with deep appreciation and gratitude to the miluimnikim and their families for all the sacrifice they continue to make. And an anonymous person in the zechut of a refuah shleima for Rav Netanel ben Mirel. So we are grateful to all of you for your support of Torah learning and of making this evening possible. Thank you. It is now my great pleasure and zechut to introduce Rabbi David Fohrman. Rabbi Fohrman is the founder of Aleph Beta, and he's the lead scholar at Aleph Beta, which has a vast library of content, both animated videos, podcasts, books. He and his team share his pioneering view of reading the Torah text. Prior to his founding of Aleph Beta, Rabbi Fohrman served as a senior editor and writer for the ArtScroll Talmud Project. He also taught biblical themes as adjunct faculty at Johns Hopkins University, where he had earlier received a master's degree in Western intellectual history. Rabbi Fohrman received his rabbinical and Talmudic training at the Ner Israel Rabbinical College, but some of his earliest and most profound exposure to biblical text analysis came from his encounters with Rabbi Yosef Leibowitz in his childhood years in Northern California. So we are so honored to have Rabbi Fohrman come out to Beit Shemesh to share with us his shiur titled, How Do We Discover God? What Noach and Bat Paro tell us about the nature of faith. Rabbi Fohrman. Watch your second wife. Okay.
Here for now. Just for now.
Up and hold if you need it.
Good. Good. Oh, just a quick note. If I can get a couple volunteers, you'll be better off with a chumash in hand. So if maybe some folks can, we get 2 or 3 volunteers to pass around a few chumashim while I just begin with a quick introduction, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, so while folks are passing out chumashim, let me first say thank you for inviting me here. It's good to be here and an honor to speak at Matan here. I've spoken at Matan in Renana and Jerusalem, but never here. So it's great to include you guys and it's nice to be here. So I'll begin with a little story to introduce what you'll hear at the end of this talk. About 4 weeks ago, I was giving a talk to a small group of folks on Zoom, and for some reason, I felt the need to expand on a Rambam at the beginning of the Ad Chazaka. The Rambam was talking about God as the source of truth in the universe, and he was using truth in a way which is different from how you and I normally think of truth. He was using the concept of truth as signifying something that exists independently, as opposed to something that only exists because of some other reason. The difference between what you might call essential existence and contingent existence. And to make this idea kind of come alive, I decided to pick on one of the guys in the Zoom, and whose name was Judah. And I said, and Judah happened to be a country music fan. So I said, imagine that Judah, a country music fan, came up with this theory of mathematics under which 2 + 2 = 5. And he was a charismatic guy, and he got some people to believe it. But then he built a country song based on 2 + 2 = 5. And the country song just took off, and everybody was singing it. Its lyrics were great, the tune was catchy, and pretty soon you had lots and lots of people believing this thing, that 2 + 2 = 5. Pretty soon there were academic conferences where the idea was taken seriously. Mathematicians debated whether 2 + 2 = 4 or 2 + 2 = 5. And you had a serious swath of humanity that had come to the conclusion that 2 + 2 = 5. Would 2 + 2 = 5 be true? So it still wouldn't be true the same way that 2 + 2 = 4 is true. It would have existence in the world. The idea would exist in the world, but the only reason it exists in the world is because it's propped up by people believing it. So it's dependent existence, it's contingent existence. It exists because people believe in it. But even if nobody in the world believed that 2 + 2 = 4, 2 + 2 = 4 would still be true because it has independent existence, because it just is true. Its truth, its existence is not dependent upon people believing in it. It just is true. So that was the point I was making. No sooner did I finish this talk than Judah Fish sends me by WhatsApp this big picture, right? A banner, 2 + 2 = 5, with a picture of beer and a lasso and cowboy spurs in the picture. And then he sends me the lyrics to the song. I kid you not, the lyrics to the song. And they were great lyrics, really great lyrics. A song about this charismatic professor, him, right? All in country song format, right? Who teaches the world that 2 + 2 = 5 due to his charisma, and, starts building bridges on this basis, right? Who cares if you build a bridge? The math is only off a smidge. And, but how come we're in this plane that's in this steep nosedive, right, with the wing on fire? It was a really hilarious song. And then no sooner do I get the lyrics than I get an audio file. And I play the audio file, and he's got this song going, right? This 2 +, he's just done it like that. He just made up the lyrics and then given it to an artificial intelligence song creator. And before you knew it, he had this gorgeous country song, right? I was just completely floored by that. I played it for my partner, Emmanuel Shalev. And Emmanuel is not someone to take competition lightly. So Emmanuel decided that he was not going to be outdone. So I was in the middle of recording a podcast on the themes that I'm going to talk to you about tonight. So Emu surreptitiously took all of my notes, 45 pages of them, and fed them to Claude, an AI, and asked Claude for a beginning draft of a country song on the basis of those notes. Claude obliged, gave him something that was much too expansive. Emmanuel said, no, cut it down. It can only focus on one theme. You can allude to some other things. And that's what Claude did. Emu spent the next hour and a half beating the lyrics into shape, and then created his own country song on this basis, which really is quite something. It's actually a great way of taking a talk that's about an hour long and boiling it down to 3.5 minutes. So I could just play you the song, but you wouldn't really understand it without the talk. But I do want to play you the song. So I brought my speaker. I'm going to play it to you at the end of this, so stick around. It really is quite an experience. I actually have 2 versions of it. If you beg me, I'll play you the second version too. He's got a country version and a slightly gospel version that's a little bit more epic. You can vote on which one you like better. But let me give you the shear that underlies it, because I think it's meaningful to me, and I hope it'll be meaningful to you. And if nothing else, it'll help you understand the song. So let me just ask you one thing. Can I get a glass of water or something like that? That'd be fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so in a moment, we're going to dive into some text, but I want to start with a background question. And, it's one of those big questions. It feels to me like everybody at some point in their lives, or most people at some point in their lives, sort of stand back from their regular routine, whether their routine is going to school in the morning, doing homework at night, playing basketball in the afternoon, or whether you're older and you're driving carpool and making meals and doing whatever you do during the day. And sort of ask some of the big questions about life. One of the biggest questions you can ask is, how do we discover God? How do we come to believe in God? You grow up in a frum home, you raise your kids, hopefully you teach them to believe in God. That's one way to do it. But then, the kid always asks themselves, if I didn't grow up in this house, would I still believe in God? What would it look like for me to try to discover God on my own? What would the paths be? What are those paths? And I think it's a personal question, and everybody has their own answer to it. I have my own kind of answers, and not only did I changed throughout life. Not so much that I thought that anything I believed when I was younger was wrong, but I think different answers resonate with you differently with your life experiences, with what it is that you're going through life. When I was younger, I was a big reader of science, and I found, thank you so much. I found a lot of inspiration in scientific writing, astrophysics, the nature of the fundamental constants in the universe seemed too fine-tuned to emerge by chance. Stuff in biology, stuff in chemistry seemed to add up to this notion that it just didn't seem like chance, like life was a product of chance. Later, if you would have asked me later, I would say, well, it's the miracle of history, right? Jews have survived. It doesn't seem to make sense. All other nations have perished. The Bible seems to predict that this is an eternal nation, and history seems to bear that out. That seems to be a great proof of God. Later in life still, my partner, Emmanuel Shalev, same guy who wrote the song, kind of makes fun of me that when he first came to Aleph Beta, he once kind of asked me this question, so what is it that makes belief in God really compelling to you? And I gave what seemed to be the most pat answer imaginable. I said, to me, the greatest proof of God is the Torah. He said, what do you even mean by that? How can you even say that? The greatest proof of God is the Torah? Like you might say, once I believe in God, I believe in the Torah, but you wouldn't believe in God because of the Torah. So I said, no, I think you believe in God because of the Torah. If you read the Torah well enough, you find, if you scratch underneath the surface, there's layers there. There's layers of meaning there. It's all interconnected in a way that I've never seen any other book be. It's just like Shakespeare's not that way. Chaucer's not that way. Beowulf's not that way. They don't make literature like that. There's something about this thing that's divine. It's like the human body. It's like the human cell. You see a cell, its complexity. It's not something that, with trillions of dollars in medical research, we can't yet actually replicate a single cell in a laboratory, like build it on our own. And that's like, imagine an extraterrestrial spaceship falls from space. You try to replicate it. If you had enough money, maybe you could replicate it. We can't replicate a single cell with trillions of dollars in medical research. The Torah is kind of like that. You can study it, you can find meaning in it, but trying to replicate the document with those layers in it, it really seems divine. But there's a weakness in each of those arguments. It's not so much that the argument is weak, but you have to ask yourself, what was God thinking? What does God want as a way of us coming to know him? You could say science, modern astrophysics, modern chemistry, modern biology. But then someone could turn to you, right? You say, okay, that's true. That works for you. That works for you now in 2026. It works for you in the last 30, 40, 50 years. But let's say you lived in the 17th century and you didn't have access to that level of science yet. So that avenue wouldn't be open to you, right? So God can't be counting on 21st century science as making him evident in the world. So, if you were in the 17th century, then what? You can say, well, the miracle of Jewish history. Okay, but what if you were living somewhere and you didn't know about Jews? So would you have no pathway to God? What then? The Torah. All right, that's great. So if you can learn the Torah and see those layers, right? If you were lucky enough to have a teacher that taught you how to do that, great. And if you were lucky enough, great. But what if you weren't? What if you grew up somewhere and you didn't have access to that? So what does God want from you then? What's the path to him then? And that's kind of what I want to talk to you tonight about. But I want to talk to you about it tonight in the context of two biblical narratives that I think shed light on this question in a surprising way, at least for me, personally for me. To give you a kind of example of what I'm talking about, I suspect that there's a certain very interesting path to trying to discover God, which is a little bit different than those that I've just described to you. You're discovering God through science. You're discovering God through the world, through something out there. If you're discovering God through Jewish history, you're discovering God through something out there. Even in the Torah, it's something out there. Some people lean on personal experience. The problem with personal experience is it's hopelessly subjective, right? Just because you have some experience, right? If your neighbor came to you and said, the Lord, right? Would you be inspired and say, wow, that's really amazing. God really showed her how to believe in God? Or would you call social services and say, like, my neighbor thinks she's hearing voices in the middle of the night. Thank you, right? So subjective experience we feel is not trusted. Is there a kind of subjective experience that should be trusted, that we ought to trust? Is there some sort of hybrid between subjective and objective experience? Something that happens to you, right? That you can't replicate, that you cannot prove, but leaves you utterly convinced that there's a God in the world, almost because there's something objective about what happened to you, even though it happened to you. I'll give you a crazy example. I don't know if you guys are science fiction fans, but the movie Contact from the 1990s. Anyone see the movie Contact? Jodie Foster, anybody? Right, okay, there you go. Right, so so God is the ultimate terrestrial, right? It's a story about contact with an extraterrestrial civilization that's very advanced. So there's these aliens, they send these messages, and a message about how to build a machine that would allow us to interact with them. But the problem is the machine only listens, right? There's only one person who goes there. And because of a quirk of Einsteinian relativity, the nature of the journey is relative to, right? Time is relative. And when you're on the journey takes 14 hours. But relative to you here on Earth, the journey happens in the blink of an eye. And the Jodie Foster character in the movie takes this journey, has this incredible encounter, which she cannot deny, right? But here on Earth, the whole thing passes in a split second. There's this congressional hearing, and here she is, this sort of atheist kind of scientist who's testifying before Congress, and Congress trying to ask, have you wasted all of our money, billions and trillions of dollars on this flight of fancy? And you have absolutely no proof to buttress this notion that it happened, but she's absolutely sure it happened. It was real to her, right? It's something that she can't demonstrate. That's what I'm talking about. Something like that, right? Is that the way God works? And what would that even look like? I think a model of it you see, interestingly, in two strange stories. The stories in the title of this talk. One of them is the daughter of Pharoah story in last week's Parsha. The other is the story of Noach. Story of Noach and the birds. Oh, I didn't realize I was supposed to be talking to that guy. No problem. I'll do my best. Yeah.
It's fine. No one's complaining.
So let me begin with the story of the birds. You all know the story of the birds with Noah, right? The doves, the ravens, 3 flights of the birds. It's a strange story, and I'll tell you why it's strange. Imagine that story wasn't there, right? Imagine some editor up there in heaven before the Torah was given at Sinai said, we don't need the birds, and took out the birds. Imagine the story just said, right? After the flood, the waters started to recede, like it says in the text. After the flood, you could see the tops of the mountains, like it says in the text. After the flood, the ark came to rest on Mount Ararat, like it says in the text. And then it said, and after a few months, God said to Noach, you should open up the door of the ark and let everybody out. And he did. That would be a perfectly fine story, right? Like, you wouldn't come complaining to me and say, but Rabbi Fohrman, where are all the birds? You wouldn't do that, right? Like, that would be a little socially off, right? What do you mean, where are all the birds? Oh, how come he didn't send out the birds a few times? Right? No, he doesn't need to send out the birds. He looked out the window. He saw the waters were going down. He saw, you could see the mountaintops, right? And then God told him to open the ark. So he opened the ark. What's the deal with the birds? That's what I want to talk to you about tonight. What is the deal with the birds? Like, why do we have to have that story? It seems like completely wasted space. What is happening with the birds? If the entire story of the birds is superfluous, there's one part of the story which is extra special superfluous, which like really shouldn't be there. Let me show it to you. If you have a chumash, open if you would to the story of the birds in Bereshit Perek Chet. Bereshit Perek Chet pasuk tes. Lo matza Yonah manoch l'kaf raglav. So the Yonah on its first flight out, it couldn't find a place to land. But tashav elav el hateva. So it returned to the boat. Ki mayim al pnei kol haaretz. Vayishlach yado vayikachea, and Noach stretched out his arm, vayikachea, and took it, vayaveo sa elav el hateva, and brought it to him inside the teva. Now, if you were one of the ministering angels whose job it was to edit the Torah before it was given at Sinai, you can imagine looking at this verse and saying, Almighty Lord, I think there's a few words we can cut from here without really losing anything. So God says, what do you mean? So you say, well, sire, the end of the verse, I think we could just kind of get rid of it. Well, what do you mean we can get rid of it? Well, let's read the first part of the verse. First part of the verse says that when the bird went out and it couldn't find a place to land, vatashav elav elateva, it returned to the boat. Now, if that's all it said, it returned to the boat, and then Noach waited 7 days, that would be a fine story, right? You wouldn't come to me and say, excuse me, but Rabbi Fohrman, how did it return to the boat? Did it fly in through the window, or did it land on the bow? Maybe it landed on the stern. Did it stay there for a while before, did it crawl around the perimeter of the boat, or did it come in immediately? You don't need those details. I don't care how it got into, right? What difference does it make? The point is, it's back at the boat. That's all I need to know. Vatashav elav elateva. Why do you have to say, vayishlach yado, vayikachea, vayaveh osai elav elateva? Bottom line is, the bird is back, the bird is back. You tell me he waited and then sent out the bird again, I get the idea. I wouldn't have missed anything. What in the world is this text doing here? But then, one of my students alerted me to something, which seems like it's the tip of a really large iceberg. Maybe you can find it as well, because I tried this with my kids, took 2 of my kids, learned this with them separately, said, okay, just read this text. And as you read this text, this one verse, ask yourself, is there any verse later in the Torah that it sort of kind of reminds you of? And they both independently got the same answer, which is the same as one of my students. See if you can pick it up, right? After the bird comes back, what does Noach do? Vayishlach yado, vayikacheha, vayaveh osa elav elateva. Where else in the Torah do we have someone stretching out their hand, taking something in, bringing something to them, shelter, right? What does this remind you of? Bat paro, right? It's the same language as bat paro. It's just feminine. That's all it is, right? But tishlach es hamasa, by the way, right? Were you in grade school when it says, and she sent her maidservant, right? But the word for maidservant is arm. And so what did they make you do? Right? Make the long paper mache arm to bring home, because that's what Chazal say. Chazal say the Amma wasn't just a maidservant, it was like an arm. It's like literally Noach. Noach sends his arm, the daughter of Paro, according to Chazal, sends her arm. And he takes the bird, and she takes go into, what is it? Vatikacheha, right? And she takes it in. It in here is the boat. And then later on, what does she do next? She goes and Miriam intercedes, right? And the baby's got a nurse, so goes to mom to nurse, right? But then she comes back when mom brings back the bird, not the bird. Mom brings back Moshe, but to the Yehu, Labas Paro. There's the Vayave Osai Lavelateva. Right? And then, I'm sorry, I keep on you. Okay. All right, no problem. So it's all 3 words, right? Vayishlach yado, vayikachea, vayave osai. And plus, by the way, where does the bird go back and forth from? The teva. How many tevas are there in the Torah, boys and girls? There's only 2. Where's the only other teva we got? It's Moshe's boat. There's only 2 tevas in the Torah. And there's this Vayishlach Yado moment, this Vayikachea moment, this Vayaveh. Somehow, whatever was Noach was doing, she was doing. Whatever Noach was doing at the beginning of Bereshis, she was doing at the beginning of Shmos. What were they doing? So what I want to do with you is to actually go back and look carefully at the story of the bird, and then ask what light it sheds on the story of Bas Paro, and see how these 2 interact, and why these stories of the birds are not superfluous after all. What really is going on in the story? To do that, let's go back to the beginning. Take a look at the beginning of the story of the flood. One of the strange things you'll notice in the flood story is that there seems to be a lot of repetition. For example, if you look at Perek Zayin, then to Perek Zayin, God comes to Noach and tells him he should take animals and put them on a boat. How many of each animal should he take? 2. That's it for the end of Perek Zayin. No sooner does Perek Ches begin than God talks to Noach again and says, you should take animals and put them on the boat, as if that never happened. Like this repetition. Except this time it's a little different. This time, how many animals are you supposed to take? Well, it depends. Let's read the beginning of Perek Ches. I'm sorry, beginning Perek Zayin. Right? Yeah. So end of Perek Vav, beginning Perek Zayin. End of Perek Vav, take 2. Right? Right? Perek Vav pasuk Yotes. Mikol achai, mikol basar, shnayim mikol taviyel ateva. Lachayot itach zachar nekeva yiyu. All right. But take a look at the beginning of Perek Zayin. Vayomer Hashem leNoach, bo ata v'chol beis chal ateva, ki otcha ra'isi tzadik lefanai b'dor hazeh, mikol ha'behema Torah tikach lecha shiva shiva. If you have clean animals, then you should take 7 of them. And if you have unclean animals, you should take 2 of them. Right? Strange. What's going on? The key to the answer, I think, lies in who's doing the talking. If you look at the end of Perek Vav, who was it who addressed Noach? God. But what's the name for God? Take a look. End of Perek Vav. Pasuk Yud Gimel. Vayomer Elokim leNoach. This speech is given by Elokim. Take a look at the beginning of Perek Zayin. Who's talking? Hashem. Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's the key. Throughout the whole story of the flood, you will find this incredible dialogue almost between Elokim and Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's crazy, but that's what actually is happening. Even in the beginning, look at the beginning of the story. Perek Vav, Pasuk Hey, God's decision to destroy the world. Vayar Hashem ki rabba ra'as hadam baretz v'chol yetzer machshavos libo rak kol hayam. God saw there was terrible evil in the world. All of man's thoughts were evil all day long. Vayinachem Hashem ki aseh hadam baretz vayisatzev alibo. God became sad that he created man. He said, I'm going to have to wipe out man from the face of the earth, right? So God decided to destroy the world, right? Then, few psukim later, Elah told us Noah, Vayolad Noach shlosha banim, and then, as if nothing happened, Vatisha ches haaretz lifnei Elokim, Vatimalei haaretz chamas, Vayar Elokim haaretz v'inei nishchasa. Again, a whole new story having to do with God's decision to destroy the world. But this time, it's not Yud Kei Vav Kei. This time it's Elokim. What's going on? I think what's happening is the Torah is using the dichotomy between Yud Kei Vav Kei and Elokim to tell us a story. Who is God really? Well, we hear that Noach is a tzaddik. Noach is a tzaddik because he walks with God. But pay attention carefully to the language. Noach, ish tzaddik b'haya b'dorosav. What are the next words? Es ha'elokim yishalech Noach. Noach walked with God. But to be a little bit more precise, who did Noach walk with? Elokim. Now that word hitalech, that's a very interesting word. It's a hitpa'el form of halach, which can either mean reflexive or it can mean mutual, like lihit katev in Hebrew, which means to pen pal, correspond. Lihit can mean to walk with someone, right? Where else do you have this notion of a human being walking with God before Noach? Back in Gan Eden. Where is it in Gan Eden? Where is that notion of hithalech in Gan Eden, this notion of human beings possibly walking with God? It happens after they eat from the tree. After they eat from the tree, vayishma'u, they hear, kol Hashem Elokim, mithalech bagan l'ruach hayom, as if God was coming to walk with them. But the tragedy is, they were hiding. They were nowhere to be found. So God says, Ayeka, where did you go? I have my jogging shoes on. I'm ready to walk with you guys, right? But they were hiding. And because they were hiding, they didn't have a chance to discuss it with God. And ultimately, they get banished from the garden. But it's very interesting because if they would have walked with God, who would they have walked with? It's almost like the whole purpose of life is to walk with God, to do what they didn't do back in the garden. Abraham is told to walk with God, right? Noach walked with God. Adam and Chava were supposed to walk with God. But which God were they supposed to walk with? If you look carefully at that pasuk back in Gan Eden, which God were they supposed to walk with? Vayishma'u, and they heard, as kol Hashem Elokim mithalech bagan l'ruach hayom. Both names. They listened to the voice of Hashem Elokim walking in the garden. They were supposed to walk with Hashem Elokim, and they didn't. They hid. Do you know the words Hashem Elokim as a descriptor of God appear almost never in the Torah? Almost never. God is throughout the Torah either Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, or Elokim, but very rarely both. The exception is Gan Eden. In Gan Eden, Hashem Elokim is used 19 times. What's the meaning of that? I want to suggest that there's a truth of God, and there's the way we perceive God. One of the things we say about God, we don't know that many things about God. The Rambam says we can know almost nothing about God. We know what God isn't, but we know very little about what God is. But there's one thing that we say in the positive about what God is. One thing we confidently assert about God. And we say it every day, twice. What do we say about him? Hashem Echad. He's one. What do we say about him? We say, God is Elokim and he's Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. But you know what Elokim it is that we worship? You know who our Elokim is? Right? It is Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, right? Shema Yisrael. Hashem Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is Elokeinu. And this Hashem is not separate from Elokeinu, but Hashem Echad. Really, there is no difference between Elokim and Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. God is one. But that's not how he appears. Chazal famously talk about Yud-Kei Vav-Kei and Elokim as representing different midos, Kaviyachol v'Hakadosh Baruch Hu, different aspects, different, so to speak, personality traits of God. So Chazal will tell us Elokim, when you have the word Elokim, that refers to what midah of God? Judgment, din, right? And when you have Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, that refers to what midah of God? Rachamim. But Shema comes along and says, that's just an illusion. That's just the way you see it, you human beings. In fact, Din and Rachamim are really just two sides of the same coin. God is actually one. But it doesn't look that way. In the world, sometimes it looks like God is a judge, and sometimes it looks like he's a Rachaman. Sometimes it looks like he's compassionate. And the reason why that's true is because that's the way everything looks in the world. If you think about the world, one of the most fundamental things that we can say about our world is that it's not a world of oneness. It's a world of twos. Everything's fragmented in our world. This lectern is one lectern, but it's only one lectern until I take an axe to it and make it into two lecterns. There's nothing in this world that I can't take an axe to and make it into two. I can take a molecule and divide it into atoms. I can take an atom and divide it into protons and electrons. I can take a proton and divide it into quarks. We haven't met the thing that I can't take an axe to it and divide it into something else. God is the one thing that doesn't work that way. He's an utter simplicity, a oneness that can't be divided into two. But because everything is two in our world, we human beings live in a world that's fragmented. We live in a world of space and time. Space and time are the ultimate fragmenters. If I live here in space, I can't be over there. If I am in the present in time, I can't be in the future. I can't be in the past. I'm fragmented. I'm in one place. It's interesting, God's world you ask yourself, what does God's world look like? You say, I don't know what God's world looks like. The Torah actually gives you a picture of God's world. You know where you get it? Second verse in creation. Read the second verse in creation the way Rashi reads it. Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, but the way Rashi reads it is different. In the beginning of God's creating the heavens and the earth is how Rashi reads it. And now verse 2, when the world was very chaotic, when there was darkness on the face of the deep, when there was a wind of God hovering over the waters, that's when God said, Vayihi Or. When you read it that way, the first thing that God created was what? Light, right? That was the first thing. Before that, there wasn't anything created. So how come there was all this water all over the place? Where did that come from? How did that not get created? The answer is that was before creation. What do you mean before creation? That was God's world. He created our world. What is his world like? Well, it's like water. It's like dark. It's like chaotic. What do you say the common denominator of water, dark, and chaotic is? No boundaries. Very good. No boundaries. If something's chaotic, everything's mixed up. It's all one. If it's dark outside, everything looks the same. It looks like it's all one. If there's water all over the place, what is water? It's the great homogenizer. You take a drop of food coloring, put it in water, and all of a sudden it's everywhere. It's all one. All these things make it look like one. The Torah's metaphor for a world of oneness, which is inhospitable to human life. Who would want to live in a place that's dark, cold, and chaotic, wet? You know how to fish? You don't live in that. It's like, but that's God's world. It's a world of oneness. Our world is a world of two. So in a world of two, Hashem, you can pretend God Elohim. But the fact of the matter is, in a world of oneness, God transcends that. God is one. By the way, that world of oneness, a world that's dark, a world that's wet, that the only thing there is water, a world that's chaos, dark, water world, chaos, dark, water world, chaos. What does that kind of remind you of? Close your eyes. What's a water world that's chaotic and dark with water splashing everywhere, these huge waves crashing all over the place? What does this look like? Where else do we get a picture of this in the Torah? It's the Mabul. Almost as if the Mabul is just as Chazal say it is, God being machzir the world to Tohu Vavohu, taking the world back to Tohu Vavohu, which really just means taking the world back to God. Like God's showing up, saying, I'm here. There's nothing inherently bad about God being here. The problem is human beings aren't really built to deal with that, so they die. That's the flood. God is like, I got to renovate the world. I got to start over. I'm back, right? So you human beings, if you don't have a way of dealing with that, you're back, right? And God comes with clouds to do it. Isn't it interesting? Clouds, by the way. God's from a water world. We're in a world from air. What happens when you take water and you take it into air? What does it look like? A cloud. If I have to explain to little Billy what a cloud is, it's water droplets suspended in air. Do you notice whenever God shows up, it's always in a cloud? Because when God comes from his water world, so to speak, into our world, the metaphor is the cloud. So God comes in a cloud to destroy us, but isn't it interesting that there's a moment when we're saved, when we could be saved? A moment of sin where we're destroyed is when the clouds come to destroy us and God comes into our world. But there's another moment where God comes into our world and we come to meet God and God's in the cloud and we come with our own cloud to meet him every year. When is this? This is Yom Kippur. The most profound and dangerous moment of Yom Kippur is when the Kohen Gadol goes lifnai v'lifnim, takes the coals from the Mizbeach HaKtoros, and then there's a cloud of incense, and there's a cloud over the Aron, and the cloud over the Aron is God, Ki ba'anan erai ala kaporos, and the cloud of incense is our incense cloud, and when that cloud of incense goes up, v'chisa anan hakatoros es hakaporos, and that cloud covers the kaporos and merges with God's cloud, below Yamut, it's a dangerous moment, you could die. But if he doesn't die, That's kapara. The same cloud that would kill you is the cloud that could save you. Almost as if Noach could have been a Kohen Gadol. A Kohen Gadol beseeches Rachamim. Es ha'elokim hisalech Noach. Noach walked with God. What are we supposed to do? We're supposed to do what Adam and Chava are supposed to do. Walk with both sides of God. Understand that God is a Rachaman and he's Din, and those two things come together mysteriously, and he's both. But as we got banished from Gan Eden, with a lie in our heads. And the lie came to us, courtesy of a certain serpent, whose deepest lie was not that we should eat from the fruit of the tree, but whose deepest lie was about the nature of God himself. What does the snake say to Chava? The snake says to Chava, Af ki amar Elokim lo tochlu mikol eitz hagan. Throughout the entire Gan Eden narrative, God is always referred to as Hashem Elokim, together, with one exception. Only once he's not referred to that way, when the serpent speaks. Af ki amar Elokim lo tochlu mikol eitz hagan. Did Elokim really say that you shouldn't eat from the trees? The snake's deepest lie is that God is only Elokim. He has no love for you, no compassion for you. He's just a judge with his white beard in heaven, throwing javelins, and he probably wants to keep the trees for themselves. And even though, sure, he gave you the trees and just put one tree off limit, what would happen if God ever said, don't eat from all the trees? What if he starts getting territorial on you? What if you're in a battle with this God of power and justice? Don't you think you should assert your rights? Maybe a little preemptive strike? Eat from his tree before he takes yours? The greatest lie of the serpent, that God was only Elohim. And with that lie, we became banished into a world where we believed that lie. And so the greatest among us, after the world was full of corruption, the one who walked with God, still could only bring himself to walk with one aspect of God. Instead of walking with Hashem Elokim, Eila told us Noach. Noach ish tzadik haya b'dorosav, es ha'elokim hisalech Noach. He was a good guy. He walked with God. He wanted to do the right thing. But his concept of God was a God of justice. The notion that God loves you, that there's a world of rachamim, that's beyond Noach. And so, when God comes and says 7 more days, and there's going to be a flood, and everything's going to be destroyed, Noach had a choice. If you had 7 days until the end of the world, what could you do with those 7 days after the ark was already built? What could you do? Somebody else had that question asked of him. It was Moshe. Who's the only other guy that gets that bargain? I'm going to destroy everybody and start over with just you. That was Moshe after the Ego. After the Ego, God came to Moshe and said, I've had it with these people. They're an Am Kshei Oref. They deserve to be destroyed. Va'ata, and now, Hanichali. Leave me alone. Va'chalei karega, and I'll destroy them in a moment. And I'll make you into a great nation. Noach's promise one more time. Leave me alone and I'll destroy everyone. The Ramban asks, why didn't Moshe just go to the bottom of the mountain, get the people to do tshuva, bring the tshuva back up to God? How come he stayed at the top of the mountain? What's the answer? What did God say? Leave me alone and I'll destroy them. What happens if Moshe leaves God alone and starts walking down the mountain? What does he see when he gets to the bottom? Nothing left. Moshe is forced to conduct the first filibuster in human history at the top of the mountain. He's got to talk to God without the people doing tshuva because he's got to keep him from killing him. So he throws everything. He says the most ridiculous of things. God, why are you so mad at your people? I mean, hello, they're worshiping a calf maybe, right? But it's like he'll stop at nothing. It's like, no, I demand rachamim. I'm not going on. Just wipe me out of the book. I'm with them. You can't do this. I'm not going along with you. He leverages every single bit of capital that he has to keep the people alive. Vayinachem Hashem, and it works. Interesting what God says to Moshe. Hanicha li v'charapi bahem. Leave me alone. Do you know Hanicha there is spelled without a yud? What's the shorish? Noach. Almost as if, what's he really saying to Moshe? Hanicha li v'charapi, leave alone. Somebody else left alone. You just be in Noach. Hanichali bicharapi bahem. Noach left me alone when I said I'll make a whole nation out of him. Why don't you do that? And Moshe was like, I went out of the teva once. I'm not going back in. Like, I'm not doing that. So Moshe went and demanded rachamim from God. But Noach, Esa Elohim nitalech Noach. And if you had to personify Noach, what would Noach say? If you came to Noach and said, Noach, you should have argued. Right? Carrie, you're Noach. What would you say? Noach, you should have argued. But you're an Elohim guy. Give me your justification. No, what Noach would say by way of defense. Why didn't Noach argue? You're Noach. I come with Tinus. Carrie, you should have argued. Right? But you're an Elohim guy. Who am I to argue? He's God, the master of the universe. He's the judge of the whole world. I didn't go to law school. I mean, I trust him. You know what I mean? He took the bar. He knows the law. He knows corruption when he sees it. I'm not supposed to trust God. I trusted God. What do you want from me? That's Noah. And as you go later on in the story, it turns out that Elohim comes to him and says, you should take 2 of every animal. And then Yud Kei Vav Kei comes to him and says, you know what, you should really take 7 of the tahor animals and 2 of the other animals. That's what happens in Perek Zayin. Let's look a little farther and see, what does he do? Does he take 7 or does he take 2 of the clean? I mean, like, who does he listen to? Like, can't listen to both. Pasuk Zayin, in Perek Zayin, Vayavo Noach, Vishto and Sheban Avitola Teva. So Noach gets on the boat. Umina behema Torah, umina behema asher einena Torah, from both kinds of animals. Umina of asher v'chol mromes al adama. Shnayim bo el Noach la Teva. 2 by 2 they came on. Zachar and Nekeva. Kasher tziva Elokim es Noach. Fascinating. He listened to Elohim. He was an Elohim guy. With that background, let's look at the story of Noach and the birds. The story of Noach and the birds begins in Perek Zayin. And here I need a volunteer to play Noach. Can I get a Noach volunteer, anybody? No? Oh no, I have to pick on people again? I'll be a nice interlocutor. No? Okay, we have a Noach volunteer. What's your name? Gil. All right, so Gil's going to be Noach. Ready? All right, so Gil, pay close attention. Everybody pay close attention. We're going to read this. We're going to interview Noach about his experience. Vayomer Hashem LaNoach. Hashem says to Noach, Bo ata v'chol beischa lateva. Noach, I want you to come with all of your household onto the boat because I see that you're a tzaddik in this generation. All right, Gil, Noach, you're supposed to come with all of your household onto the boat. Gil, how would you understand that? What do you think that means? Who are you supposed to bring onto the boat?
My My family,
Your family. So like, give me an example.
immediate family.
Immediate family.
Nuclear family.
All right, nuclear family. So your boys come on, Shem, Ham, and Yafet. Now, if your boys are married, what about their spouses?
Yeah.
I won't tell your daughter-in-law. All right.
Yeah.
Maybe the spouses too. And by the way, that's what it says, right? Noach and the spouses, right? They both come. All right, that's a pretty reasonable interpretation of household, right? Your kids, spouses, your wife. All right, let's keep on reading. Now let's read the next pasuk, and I want all of you to tell me if there's anything strange about the next pasuk. Mikola behema Torah, from all clean animals, tikach lecha shiva shiva ish v'ishto. You should take 7 of each of the animals, man and wife. Umina behema asher lo Torah, and from the animals that are not tahor, shnayim ish v'ishto. You should take 2 of them, man and wife. Anything strange about this verse? Since when are animals man and wife? I mean, animals by definition are not man. They can't be man ish v'ishto. What would be the normal way to describe what you want here?
Zachar nekeva.
Zachar nekeva. It should say Zachar nekeva. How come it doesn't say Zachar nekeva? That's what it should say. Very weird. What is this ish v'ishto business referred to twice? Really, really strange. Now, let's keep on reading. Yeah. Sure. That's true. We don't really, that's an anachronism. Seems to be something in the future. Good question. Not going to get involved in that, but it is an interesting question, right? But an animal which ultimately would be kosher on the mizbeach, right? From which ultimately Noach would seem to take offerings from, but that's strange, I grant you. Okay, let's keep on reading. Then something strange happens in Pasuk Gimel. Gam me'of hashamayim shiva shiva. You should also take from the birds 7 and 7. Zachar and nekeva, male and female. Lachayot zera al pnei kol haaretz. So that seed life can take root again, right? So that seeds can be scattered upon the ground. Birds are good at scattering seeds. What's strange about this pasuk? Here it uses Zachar and nekeva. So how come the birds are Zachar and nekeva, but the animals are ish v'ishto? Pretty weird. It's not like the author doesn't know the word Zachar and nekeva. Here the birds are Zachar and nekeva. So what happened to the animals? Why are they ish v'ishto? Take a look at these psukim again. Gil, you're being saved. You're being brought on the boat. According to the text, why are you being brought on the boat? Go back to that first pasuk. Could you please explain, Gil, why you are being shown this grace to go on the boat?
Because I'm righteous in this generation.
You're righteous in this generation. You're a good guy. Gil is a good guy. That's why he gets to go on the boat. Gil, why does your household get to go on the boat? Is it because they're good guys too?
Association, I guess. I don't know.
Association, right? I don't know about those in-laws, right? But the bottom line is they don't have to be good because who's good? You're good.
Yeah.
And they're your household. So they get to ride on your coattails, right? That because it doesn't say the household was good. It says you're good, and therefore you and your household get to go on the boat, right? Okay. Now here's something really strange. Mikola behema Torah. So now when it comes to the birds, how come the birds get to go on the boat? Let's skip to the birds. Gam me'of hashamayim shiva shiva. Also the birds, you should take shiva shiva zachar nekeva lachayot zera al pnei kol haaretz. Gil, how come the birds go on the boat?
Utility. They have a
utility.
Use in the future.
The birds have a utility. They have a purpose. They're going to be the seed spreaders, right? You need birds. Now, do the birds go on the boat because they're tzaddikim? No. The birds go on the boat because they're important to have. Birds, right? We hear birds need to be on the earth. Okay, now here's the $64,000 question. Why do the animals go on the boat? Look at the text. Mikola behema Torah tiklach shiva shiva ish v'ishto. Mina behema asher lo Torah shnayim ish v'ishto. Gil, why do the animals go on the boat?
Doesn't say, but you could either say maybe as an extension of me that they'll be useful like the first, or that they'll be useful later like the second. Probably.
Okay, so let's just understand Gil's confusion here. Gil is rightfully confused. The reason why Gil is confused is not because Gil lacks a sound mind. Gil is a very smart guy, because the pasuk itself is ambiguous. The pasuk gives no reason why the animals should be saved. They shouldn't be saved because of utility. It doesn't say what utility they have in the world. That's for birds. Birds have a utility in the world. The animals, right? So why are the animals saved? By the way, also, Gil, there's a single letter missing at the beginning of that verse, which is causing Gil a little bit of confusion. Because if I read the first verse, you should come with all of your household on the boat. So you think, who comes on the boat? You, your household, that's it, right? Then all of a sudden, as if it's the most natural thing in the world, you know, Gil, from the animals that are really tahor, you should take these. From the animals that aren't tahor, you should take those. But Gil, from the last pasuk, you should have a question, which is, who said anything about animals? Do you understand? You just told me, take my household on the boat. Then you say, from this kind of animal, take this, from this kind, but you didn't say, what about the animals? You didn't say animals. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to say animals, you should have added a vav. Do you understand? That would have been the way to do it. Take your household, in addition to the household, Gil, Mikola, and you should also take some animals. That would make sense. What do you mean? Like, of course you're going to take animals. You should take these from these kind, these from, add it all up. Why are the animals called ish v'ishto? Why isn't there no vav? Why is it the most natural thing that should be animals? How animals don't have to have utility like birds? What are we saying here?
That pasuk does not say anything about bringing the animals on the table.
What does it say?
It says nothing about bringing them on the table.
It says tikach lecha.
So bring them, do something with them. It doesn't say bring them on the boat.
Okay, I am making an assumption.
Let's have a meal, do something.
True, but if they don't get on the boat, they're not.
Barbecue.
I hear.
The others, I think it's more.
Okay, could be.
Explicit.
It doesn't mention coming on the boat, but tikach lecha would seem to be that they're right. I don't know how else you get them, that you get them saved, right? But good. What it seems to be suggesting, if you add all of this up. By the way, when they actually come into the boat, look at how they come into the boat. Let's actually read the pasuk. Pasuk test. Shnayim ba'u el Noach halateva. Gil, if you're going to bring the animals onto hippopotamuses, steer, oxen, you got to bring them all on the boat. What do you think you got to do? How are you going to bring the ox on? How are you going to bring the hippopotamus on?
The crane.
Crane. Get out, ride out with your steer and lasso. I mean, this is going to be tough, right? How are you going to get the hippopotamus? I don't know how to get the hippopotamus to go, but look at the pasuk. Shnayim ba'u el Noach. What happened? The animals came on their own, almost as if they knew they belonged. That's what Rashi says. Ba'u me'elehen. They came of their own accord, as if they knew, as if suddenly things are different than you thought they were. And I think you're right. If you add it all up, what the Torah is telling you, go back to the first question I asked Gil. When it says you should come with your whole household on the boat, the animals are part of the household too. That's the only way this makes sense. The animals are part of the household. In a crisis, your household expands. You understand? Everybody's, so to speak, on the same boat. There's a flood. Right? You think it's just your no. There's a much wider version of household now. The animals get this battlefield promotion, ish v'ishto. That's how you have to look at them, as if they're man and wife. By the way, there's a precedent for that back in Gan Eden, right? You know, like Adam went through the dating game. He dated the hippopotamus before Chava, right? No, then he had to go out the New Jersey Turnpike, then he had to date the llama, and then it didn't work out with her. But eventually settles on Chava, but there was at least a Havamina, maybe the animal, but the animals are part of your extended family. These guys, they all belong in the boat, except you should also take birds. Why? Because they have utility. So what do we see about birds?
They're not part of the family.
They're not part of the household. Zachar and nekeva. Birds are zachar and nekeva. Birds are not part of the household. So what's the difference between birds and between animals? Why would animals be more of your household than birds? They're landlubbers, just like you. They're mammals, just like you. Birds, these avian creatures, they lay eggs, they fly, very different. They're the other. We understand, God says, I understand there's always going to be an other. The birds are the other. But you know what, Noach, you should take birds too. They've got utility. They're going to be important. You need some seeds in the world. You need some birds. Take the birds too. But the animals, big tent. The animals, they're part of your household. Okay, this is our first experience with birds. Now let's continue. What's our next experience with birds? The next thing that happens with birds is Noah takes one of these birds that's just a thing. This bird that is just this utility guy, not part of the household, and he uses it for utilitarian purposes. He's got an experiment he's got to run. Now we get to the great question of what the deal with those birds were. Why that story with the birds is there in the text. It's a very strange story. It seems like he sent the birds to see if there was a place that they could put down their feet, right? Lo matzah hayona ma Noach l'kaf raglah. The bird could not find a place to put down its feet. The problem is it's absolutely impossible to read the text that way. How do you know? You know it's impossible to read the text that way because 3 psukim before that, it says that the water had receded and the water continued to recede for 150 days and that the tops of the mountains were already visible and the Teva itself was resting on Har Ararat. So what in the world was Noach trying to test for? Whether there was land out there, he could look out the window and see there was land out there. So how the bird sent, why would he send a bird? And why would the bird be unable to find a place to put down? Just fly to the nearest mountain and put down your foot. And besides, why anyway? Like he sees the waters are receding, so just wait until the waters recede, and you'll open the doors, you'll come on out. What was he really looking for? The answer is, manoach doesn't mean a place to put your foot down. Lo matzah hayona manoach l'kaf raglah. You know what manoach means? When else do you find the word manoach in Tanakh? Anyone know? Free code for correct answer. When else do you find a manoach? Not the name of the, what do you call it, right? When else do you find the word manoach? What's that? Right, but in Tanakh, right? In Tanakh, you find a manoach in Megillas Rus. Naomi says to Ruth, Biti, halo avakesh lach manoach asher yitav lach. We're going to find a manoach who's going to be good. What does manoach mean in that context? A resting place. It means a husband. It means a house. It means a nest. The bird was dispatched to find a place to nest. It couldn't find a place to nest. Now that's different than finding dry land. You're a bird. Tell me what you need to nest. I need some twigs. I need some, what else do you need? You're going to have young there. What do you need? I need some food. I need some twigs. I need some leaves. I need some vegetation. Gil, you're Noach. Let me interview you for a moment. You're about to get on the boat. It's before it's raining, right? What do you think your chances are of kind of, having a decent life after the flood, making it through this whole calamity? I mean, everybody else, they're all going to be destroyed, right? Terrible for them. But you, God says you're a tzaddik.
Pretty good.
You get on the boat, take the animals. Give me the odds.
Pretty good.
Pretty
High
good.
odds.
80, 90%.
Yeah.
Things are probably going to be pretty good. Now, by the way, I just want to point out something. God has not given Gil or Noach an ironclad guarantee. If you look carefully at the text, all God has said is you're a tzaddik, get on the boat, take some animals with you. That's all he said. This notion of pru revuah miluat aretz, go be fruitful, that's later. That's at the very end. That's when it gets out of date. That has not happened yet, right? But still, you got to think your chances are pretty good. Why would God put me on a boat, go through all the trouble, right, if I'm just going to die? But Gil, that was before the flood. That was before the 40 days of dying. That was before listening to the screams of everybody trying to get on the boat And suddenly the screams go silent, and all there is water for 150 days. And all there is silence from God. And then the water starts to recede. And then you begin to see the tops of the mountaintops. But as you look at the tops of the mountaintops, you think to yourself, this was quite an apocalyptic flood. I mean, everything was washed away. And suddenly in your nightmares, what occurs to you? What has to survive in order for you to survive? Vegetation, plant life. But how could it have survived? It all would have gotten washed away. How could anything survive? I see a bunch of barren mountaintops. I got to check this thing out. So he sends a bird. Now, the first bird was too scared. Raven came back. But then he sends a dove. What's his hope? The hope is that the bird finds a manach, a place to nest. If the bird finds a place to nest, he doesn't see that bird again. The bird just leaves and builds a nest. That's the experiment. Is there really going to be life? Now, you might say, Bill, what are you so worried about? I mean, why would God have put you on this boat with all these animals, right? Everything's good. You're on easy street. But maybe not. In your nightmares, it occurs to you. But never said things are going to be okay. God never said there's going to be a world afterwards. And it occurs to you that there's at least the possibility that if God is din and din only, that maybe Midas Hadin was so powerful that it looked at the world and said, this world deserves to be destroyed. Humanity deserves to be destroyed. So much so that not only do they deserve to be destroyed, but someone's got to witness it. Tell the story, to watch it all die, and then to come at the top of a mountain and to just live out his last days, and the human race will die out. That's at least a possibility. I got to check this out. Is there any vegetation out there? And he sends the bird. The bird comes back with nothing. It surveys all 20 mountaintops. And La'et Erev, just as the day was closing, just as the experiment was coming to an end, he sees that bird coming back, getting bigger and bigger. Gil, when that bird's coming back, you see that bird coming back with nothing. How would you feel?
Not great.
Not great. This is the worst thing that could happen. This is doom. It's all over for you, all over for the world. Now, if that's the truth of the matter, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of grief, where are we up to? Denial, anger, right? And that's what you're feeling. What might you do to that bird? That bird comes back. What do you say, this little tool of yours on this failed experiment? What do you tell the bird?
Go back out.
Go back out there. I don't want to see you again until you come back with a leaf. But I surveyed all 20 mountaintops. I don't care. Get out of here. I'm desperate. I'm angry. You take it out on the bird. It's just a thing anyway, not part of my household. Along comes the Torah and tells you that's not what Noach did. What was Noach searching for in the world? He was searching for a ray of compassion. Is there any compassion out there in the world? Or is it just in? Could God possibly smile on the world and say there's a new beginning? There's got to be some vegetation out there. The bird comes back empty-handed. But instead of screaming at the bird and sending it out again, Vayishlach yado. When he sent out the bird, Vayishalach, he sent it out that it not come back. But when the bird came back, Vayishlach yado, lashon kal, he sent out his hand to bring it back, to be a little perch that the bird could land on. Vayikacheha, and he brought it into himself. Vayaveh osai elav ala teva, and brought it into him, into the teva. He knows something that the bird doesn't know, because the bird is not a sentient creature the way he is. He knows this may be the end for both of them. But he says, but until then, you have a place to live on this boat with me. I can't provide for you the nest that you want in the world. All I can give you is this big ark. But you have a home on this big ark with me. You can have a place in the cage next to my study on the ark, right? I'll bring you home. It's this little nice thing that he does, this compassionate thing. The man who is looking for compassion in the world didn't find it there, but he found it in himself. And that language gets mirrored with Bat Paro. But before it does, God reciprocated. Because Noah, hope against hope, sends out the bird another time. When he sends out the bird another time, crazy. But the bird comes back with an olive branch. Where did that come from all of a sudden? Almost as if Noah's fate, the world's fate, was holding in the balance. Let's see what will be. Noah just discovered God. How did he discover God? He discovered Yud Kei Vav Kei. He discovered the God of compassion. How did he discover the God of compassion? There was no compassion in the world. There was compassion in his heart. Why would you be compassionate to a creature in the face of doom? You're going to die. It's all going to be over. Why would you do this? You know you're going to be dying. You're so upset. And yet you're being able to kovesh your yetzer, and you bring in that bird. You bring him into the family as if he's a daughter. You take that bird in. He didn't have to, but you said, I see God's values. He wanted me to have a larger family. I'm even bringing the bird in. You got a place for you. Why would you do that in the face of doom? You do that because you believe that compassion's a thing. It's real. It's not a choice like having Rice Krispies or Raisin Bran in the morning. It's a choice where I say, I might die. It might be all over for all of us, but I'm still going to be compassionate. I was the guy who was Mr. Din. I didn't stand up for anybody before, but I see the value of this thing. It's so valuable that if I would die, but I would be compassionate to this bird, it would be okay. It would be okay. My life would stand for something more. Because basically what Noach is saying is that I believe that compassion's real in the world. There must be some force out there that is compassionate, that I'm reflecting, that I want to be compassionate like they're compassionate. And whether you have the words to describe that or not, when you're compassionate in the face of doom, in effect, you've just discovered God. You've discovered that independent force out there in the world that's compassionate, that you believe you reflect, that you want to be like, that you say it would be okay if I could just be like that. And God is like, congratulations, you discovered me. And Noah comes out of the boat and builds this altar. To who? To Yud Kei Vav Kei. He never had anything to do with Yud Kei Vav Kei. Well, now he does. He just discovered it. And builds an altar, and it turns out he had 7 animals all along. You just didn't know about it. He tucked them away somewhere, and then took from those Behemah Tahora and offered them. And when God saw that, God came and swore and said, I ain't doing this again. Lo osif od l'kalel atz adam abu ravot. I am not destroying the world again. Noah surprised me. I never would have expected that from Noah. Noah discovers compassion. Human beings have the capacity to grow like that. You can't count them out. They can be evil. But if Noah can do that, I can't destroy the world. I can't take a chance like that. Look at how human beings can grow. You, Noah, provided. You were looking for compassion in the world. It doesn't go that way. You found me in yourself. That was how you found me. And once you found me in yourself, you brought that bird in, because you couldn't make it a home out there, but you could make a big home in the ark. So you brought it into that big home. I'm going to do for you what you did for that bird. I'm going to make you and your children a home. You took that bird in like a child and made it a home. I'll make a home for all of your children. Here's the olive branch. Here's the vegetation. Go build the world of your progeny, right? There's going to be a world for you. That's the beginning of Bereshis. In the beginning of Shmos, Somebody echoes that. Bas Paro. How is Bas Paro educated to look at a child like Moshe? They're throwing babies in the Nile. How do you throw babies in the Nile? What do you got to tell yourself about those babies if you're going to throw them in the Nile? They're not humans. They're like animals. That was her culture. That was the palace culture. She's from the palace. Suddenly, she's bathing by the side of the Nile. And, I mean, just read the text. What happens? She's bathing by the side of the Nile, and she sees something in the Nile. She hears something. The sense of... She sends her maidservant, as if that's her arm, and she brings out from the teva, she brings out that baby. And when she does, she has this mix of emotion. Batachmolala, she has compassion on the child, even as she says, Miyalde ha'ivrim zeh. It's a Jewish child. Her brain knows it's a Jewish child. She's supposed to kill this child. Her brain knows this is the child that all of the propaganda in the palace told me that this is an animal, just like the bird was just there for utility. But something else told her it wasn't true. What told her it wasn't true? Batachmolalav. The compassion in her heart told her it wasn't true. And she listened to that compassion. She said, that compassion tells me otherwise. I am reaching out to what I'm told is a thing, what I'm told is another species. And I'm bringing that species. I can bring him temporarily into the world, into that world, but ultimately the only home I can give it is in the palace. It's not a Jewish home. It's the only home I have, like Noach's teva, but I'll give you the palace. Noach was compassionate in the face of doom. Put yourself in the shoes of the daughter of Paro. What risk are you taking by bringing a Jewish child into the palace to bring up as your own child, as your own son? What are you doing? If you were one of the maidservants, you talk some sense into this girl. What would you tell her? Look who your father is. Look what he's decreed genocide against this nation. And you're going to bring up a Jewish child in the palace as a prince? And you're eventually going to tell him who he is? Are you out of your mind? How might Paro react? He could kill her. It might be the end for her. She knows that it might be the end for her. The same way that Noach knows it probably is the end. But what's she saying? She's sentient. The baby's not. She knows something the baby doesn't know. And what she knows is that it might be over for both of us. But until it's over for both of us, you have a home in my palace. Ultimately, there's a third flight of the bird. Noach sends the bird free to find a nest in the world. It was the last time he would see that bird who was part of his family. He said goodbye to the bird. So too, that bird comes back into Bas Paro's domain. Yocheved brings her there. But to the Bas Paro, what must it have been like to be Yocheved? Vayigdal hayeled, the child grew up. Vatviyehu Bas Paro, and she brings it to Bas Paro. You're Yocheved. You know this is probably the last time you see this baby. While you nurse the baby, you can never say one word to him. You can never say, you're my child. You can never say, little boy, because Bas Paro thinks you're just a hired hand. You can never tell him the truth. You hand him over to Bas Paro for the last time. How do you feel? What does it feel like? A terrible mix of emotions. It's the saddest moment of your life, but also the happiest moment. He's got a chance at life. This is the great chance. Maybe he'll live. I'm handing him off in trust to someone else. She's got to take the baton from here. And Bas Paro does. Vayigdal hayeled. The child grows up, she gives her to Bas Paro. Do you know what the next pasuk is? What's the next pasuk after that? Vayihi bayamim ahem, and it happened in those days. Vayigdal Moshe. Moshe grew up. Vayetze el Echav. And he went out to his brothers to see what was doing with them, see their pain and their suffering. How did he know those were his brothers? There's only one possibility. Yocheved couldn't have told him. He was too young, and anyway, she couldn't have told him the truth. The only one who could have told him is Bas Paro. She knew that one day she would tell him. And that day came when he was old enough. Vayigdal Moshe. The Vayigdal Moshe connects to the Vayigdal Hayeled. Do you understand? The same way that Vayigdal Hayeled, Yocheved, had that terrible choice that I've got to give you over, but I think I might lose you, but it's your only chance. Vayigdal Moshe, Bat Paro faced that same choice. She brought him up as her own child. She could have assuaged her conscience by saying, that's enough. I brought him up as a prince in the palace. What more do I need to do? But that wasn't enough for her. I have to tell him the truth. But what will telling the truth do? If I tell him, look at those slaves out there. They're not really animals. You're one of them. What's going to be? She knows that means she might lose him. It's the last she'll ever see of him. But it's what I have to do to bring him to the next stage, to bring him to the next person in his life. Sipora, to the next person in his life. God takes him under his wing. It's all these women together. At Paro, Matachmolala, when she listened to that compassion, even in the face of doom, she too was discovering God. It's the only way you make sense of that. If I would die, it would still be okay because I acted the way I needed to act, because I acted according to my heart. And my heart is this way because I reflect a compassionate being in the world, Yud-Ke Vav-Ke. And what's her name? Batya, daughter of God. God comes to Paro and says, you think it's your child. You took all my children. Now I'm taking one of yours, right? She'll be my child. Who's the only one who can stand up to a corrupt king and tell him when he intimidates the rest of the world that he's off base? And who's going to rebel against him? Have the guts to do that, except for her rebellious teenage daughter, right? And that's Bas Paro, right? And Bas Paro discovers God, just like Noach discovers God. I want to suggest that this maybe is a path that we all have to discover God. It's in our hearts. When we act with compassion in the face of difficult circumstances, we too are discovering God. Whether you call that God or not, that's what we mean by God. A force out there that is compassionate, that's authoritative, that's father-like, who do we want to be like, that we say it would be okay if I could emulate their values, even if I would die. If you do that, you've discovered God. It doesn't matter what you name it. Even if you're not a scientist, even if you're not a philosopher, all you are is look in your own life, in your own heart. But you've discovered something subjectively that's objectively true. It's there in your heart, and it only makes sense if there's a God in the world. You discovered God and connected to him. So I'll leave you with a song. I told you I'm playing your song, so you get to hear the song. There's two versions of it, but I'll just play one. If you guys beg, I'll consider the second. But let me turn on my speaker here. See if I can find it.
Built the ark because he asked me. I didn't ask him why. I was the kind of man who followed. I was the alibi. And when the rain began to hammer on the roof that I had made, didn't we both drown? I was righteous, I was safe. 40 days I heard them die. 40 nights I heard the sea. I never spoke a word of protest. I never said, what about me? I walked with God, but I didn't know him. I only knew the law. I was as good and silent servant, his shadow, nothing more. Then I sent out looking, something I couldn't name. She came back with empty feathers. I thought, well, that's the game. But I reached out through the window. I don't know what I did. I held her like she was my daughter. Held her like a kid. Something moved that I'd forgotten somewhere beneath the bone. I wanted mercy from the heavens, but I found it all on my own. Not the mercy of deserving, not the mercy of the cold, just the holding of a creature when every hope falls short. God doesn't speak the way they tell you. He doesn't bloom across the night. Something shifted in the silence when I pulled her from the light. I don't know what he was expecting. Maybe nothing, maybe less. But I held her like she mattered, and he leaned and I guess. So I sent her down looking 7 days and then once more. She brought in evening I'd never seen before. Not the mercy that you wrote, friend, not the mercy that you earned. Just a leaf torn from the wreckage of a world that wants to learn. There's a prophet in the future. He's got my name inside his chest. He'll run the wrong way from his calling. He'll fail his little test. But he'll find a crew that holds together when the water starts to rise. You could be the vine, you could be the worm, but God's waiting for your surprise. Third time out, she didn't come back. She finally found her home. I guess that's what he wanted. Not a cage, but the unknown. And I built an altar after my own two shaking hands. I finally spoke to you, cave after cave. I don't know if he understands. But crying is the cloud that wipes it clean. It depends on who is standing in the space that lies between. I'm not the man before this. I don't know what I am now. But I reached out for the bird, Lord. You're reaching for me now.
That's it, guys. The Bank Emmanuel shall live for that.
Thank you.
Anyone know the prophet? What's that? You want the gospel version? All right, I'll give you the gospel version. The prophet in the future. Who's the prophet in the future? At the name inside my chest. Right? He'll run the wrong way from his calling, but he'll fail his little test. Right? Who's that? Yonah. 1 second. Another story where the death of a civilization is on the line. Another story over ocean. Another story that takes place on a boat. Another story where 40 more days and then they'll be destroyed. the story where they would be destroyed Hamas asher b'kapeim, because of Hamas, where the prophet's name of all things is Yonah, the dove. Right? There's something about Yonah which is a replay of this in the future, a version of this in the future, the opposite of the Bat Para version, right? But a version of this in the future. Did you catch the by the way, the clouds, right? What are the clouds, right? The cloud that brought the dying is the cloud that wipes it clean. Just depends who's standing in between. It's Yom Kippur, right? You understand? That's the Ketores on Yom Kippur. You're the Kohen. By the way, the Ketores that we bring Ketores. How did God relate to the Olah that Noach brought? Vayarach Hashem et Reach HaNichach. He treated it like Ketores, almost as if at that moment he was like the first Kohen Gadol, right? The world comes out of that, right? In Rachamim. All right, guys, since you begged me, right? This version is not for everyone, right? But it's Imu's epic version of it. So here you go.
It'll be hard because he asked me. I didn't ask him why. Was the kind of man who follows, or was he alibi? When the rain began to happen on the roof that I'd made, I didn't weep for what was drowning. I was righteous, I was sinful. 40 days I heard them dying, 40 nights I heard them sing. Never spoke a word of protest. I never said what about me. I walked with God, but I didn't know him. I only knew the law. I was as good in silence, serving a shadow. Something I couldn't oh well, again. But I reached out through the window. Don't know. Held her like she was my daughter. I held her like a kid. Somewhere underneath the bone, but I found it off my own. The holding of a creature when every hope falls short. Be the way they tell you, because it moves across the night. Something shifted in the sky when I put her from the light. Maybe nothing great, but I heard he mattered, and he leaned in, I guess. I looked 7 days, and then once more, she brought an olive branch in evening. I've never seen before. But you see that you learn, just a leaf torn from the range of a world that wants to learn. There's a prophet in the future. He's got my name inside his chest. He'll run the wrong way from his calling. He'll fail his little test. But he'll find a crew that holds together when the water starts to rise. You could be the vine, you could be the worm, but God's waiting for your surprise. The third time out, she didn't come back. She finally found her home. I guess that's what he wanted, not a cage, but the unknown. And I built an altar after with my own two shaking hands. I finally spoke to you, hey, I don't know if he understands, but the cloud that brought the tide is the cloud that wipes it clean. It depends on who is standing, the space that lies between. I'm not the man before this. I don't know what I am now. I'm not the man before this. I don't know what I am now. I'm not the man who was before this. I don't know what I am now. I'm not the man I was before this. I don't know what I am now. I'm not the man I was before this. I don't know what I am. Hey, I don't know if he understands, but the cloud is the cloud that lies between. In the sun, we're standing in the space that lies between. I reached out for the bird, Lord. You're reaching for me now.